Rumour has it The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion is going to receive a remake. As far as I can tell, this rumour has been circulating since at least about 2023, and since on and off over the past few months I've been enjoying a good Skyrim kick, I thought I'd weigh in. Now, this is a topic I have observed in passing, however it isn't something that prior to today at least, researching for this video, I've looked into terribly much. I've seen the odd video crop up about it, especially recently, and feel it's important to preface that unless something is officially confirmed, it's not confirmed, regardless of how compelling the information being fed to you may seem. With that not very well disguised disclaimer to avoid the minimal chances of getting sued out the way, articles and things have been cropping up galore surrounding this topic. And why it's news of late is because apparently it could be coming this year. Now, all of the articles that have been cropping up at least this time appear to all link back to one article by MP First, an outlet I've never heard of, but hey, I don't pay attention exactly. And this appears to be a follow-up to an article posted in September of 2023, in which Bethesda's release schedule from fiscal 22 all the way through to fiscal 24 supposedly slipped out unredacted, allegedly unveiling various unannounced titles, including a remaster for The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Now, as time's gone on, the landscape of some of those fiscal years has certainly changed, but nothing ever being on time is just the nature of the games industry. Anyway, that appears to be where things originated, or at least the buzz around the topic appeared to grow from, and well, this fresh article cites a supposed reliable leaker named Nate the Hate, mentioning it again in a podcast stating that the Oblivion remaster/remake is set to be released in June of 2025. Now, you've probably noticed I'm muddling the words remake and remaster in this video, despite the two words meaning entirely different things with respect to games, and that's intentional because these articles and all of the buzz surrounding this rumoured The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion related project is doing the exact same thing. Now, of course, to me, the word of a guy I've not heard about too much doesn't make for the most compelling argument for this Oblivion remaster/remake being an actual thing, so fortunately, that doesn't appear to be all there is. In fact, MP First boldly claims, today we can confirm the project is indeed real, which is one hell of a thing to go saying without better than good evidence to back it up. That's not to say that I outright believe them purely because they've put their necks on the line with it, or in failing that credibility, as that is frankly a sword many have fallen on and many more will, but it's what they go on to say that piques my curiosity. Leaning into another rumour from about a year ago, as far as I can tell, that Virtuos Games is working on the Oblivion remake, which is, the way I understand it, an outsourcing company within the games industry that's basically worked with just about everybody on just about everything, despite enjoying some relative anonymity, or at least according to this Reddit post from 8 years ago. MP First follow up their unofficial confirmation of the project by stating a mistake made by a former Virtuos employee has provided us with not just confirmation of the Oblivion remake's existence, but also insights into gameplay improvements set to be implemented to the original game. From what I can see, the article doesn't cite anything for that and simply states that the information came from the website of a former Virtuos employee whose name they won't disclose for privacy reasons, who allegedly worked on this title from 2023 to 2024, and had previously worked on Epic Mickey Rebrushed and Call of Duty Warzone as the two given examples. If this has any truth to it, I won't imagine it would be tricky for Virtuos to figure out who in particular is being referenced here, but nonetheless, this supposed former employee's website apparently confirms the title is being developed using Unreal Engine 5 and will be fully remade, and then goes on to provide brief descriptions of 6 gameplay systems: stamina, sneak, blocking, archery, hit reaction, and HUD. Now, for the moment, let's ignore the idea of a developer putting all of this unannounced information on an unannounced title on their own website, coming across as somewhat amateur hour, and MP First's refusal to provide any pathway for seeing this information where they supposedly saw it. Remaking Oblivion in its entirety in the Unreal Engine, while not impossible, does strike me as awfully unlikely, regardless of who it is putting their balls on the line. Furthermore, though Bethesda has a flexible and charitable relationship with modders in general, were they planning for there to be an Oblivion remaster / remake, whether they're the ones working on it or not? Wouldn't the existence of Oblivion, a fan project porting Oblivion into Skyrim, that's been going on as long as I've been doing YouTube content and then some, and that's well over a decade, become a variable in dire need of elimination? I mean, before we even start thinking about the legal side of things, something I'm led to believe those behind that project have considered extremely carefully, the notion of there being a risk that this official release of a remake could be outclassed by modders who stand to gain nothing and have spent the past decade plus working on this thing purely for the love of doing it, doesn't strike me as something that would bode well in the crucial realm of business optics. Why would Bethesda, and in failing that Microsoft, be weathering that possibility of a free alternative to something they would prospectively be selling, much less showcase their hard work around a similar time to this FTC leak, which is better summarised as a list of prospects than projects? As you can imagine, I'm more than a little bit sceptical. And it's not a case of that boiling down to whether I do or don't believe these rumours, they just don't seem to make sense. Now, before I do sling a massive turd on people's fun a bit too much, I would like to say, while I have seen rumours with more seeming credibility be ultimately proven false, I have also seen far less credible rumours hold water. So, while I'm saying the rumours of an official Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion remake don't make sense, that's not me weighing in on whether I believe it's real. That being said, the truth of the matter is there is no definitive proof. Rather simply, this time around we have this claim from MP First and that's kind of it. Yes, the FTC release roadmap thingy does perhaps strengthen any argument, and Virtuos strikes me as the kind of company that could, in theory, be up to just about anything. And with the Elder Scrolls 6 teaser that we saw years ago now having been more days ago than Skyrim's release was when this teaser dropped, and that game still being nowhere in sight, it's entirely possible Bethesda and Microsoft want something Elder Scrolls related to fill the gaps. Surely they want to tap into that cash cow beyond the Elder Scrolls Online and re-releasing Skyrim for every platform known to man. And if those FTC documents mean anything, it means the idea was most certainly floated. And with Oblivion now the best part of 2 decades old, rejuvenating it isn't such a bad idea. After all, best case scenario would be promoting a great game to a new audience, while trapping many of the old audience in a cesspit of nostalgia. Now, if we're being honest with ourselves, Oblivion is not a game that has aged with grace. These days it very much so shows its years, and to an extent, that's part of its charm, as is the case with many older games. And when I say that, what I mean is some areas could certainly see improvements that a remake would naturally bring to the table, provided it's made with any form of competence, but other unintentionally amusing elements just feel a bit too sacred to go touching. So how a remake, much less in a new engine, would go about striking that balance remains to be seen. If ever we do see it, of course. If they indeed bother to strike a balance between the game that was and the prospective game that will be. As remakes typically contend with finding that sweet spot between not going too far and going far enough, in their bid to deliver a modern take on an old game. Either way, I'm not discounting the idea of an Oblivion remake being outright ill-conceived to begin with, because even as little as a more modern lick of paint and some brushed up mechanics would make it far more accessible to a wider audience in a gaming landscape that is far, far wider than it was in 2006. And of course, neither Bethesda nor Microsoft owe a fan-made mod porting Oblivion into Skyrim much of anything. So Oblivion's existence doesn't necessarily mean remaking Oblivion officially is a bad idea, though I'm sure plenty will have opinions on the idea of them using the Unreal Engine to do it. Is the idea of them outsourcing more or less the entire thing to Virtuos believable? Well, there are plenty who believe it, many of whom get referred to as insiders. And this time around, this MP First article has created an awful lot of ripples, with plenty of other outlets talking about it, perhaps in part because it's January and you need to scrape the bottom of the barrel to get by at times, an argument you could probably make for this video too. Or maybe it's because whispers of such a remake have been going on for such a long time. Now, opinions seem divided on whether or not this Oblivion remake will be making any form of appearance at the Xbox Developer Direct that's penned for the 23rd of January, which is only a few days away, with the more recent stances suggesting that it won't be there. So I suppose we should go into that without using it as a benchmark to prove if this thing is legit or false. However, if indeed such a thing is coming this year, then I can't imagine we'd have to wait long for confirmation that it is indeed real. But that's the thing with internal delays, you don't need to publicly announce them because you're not talking about something that's been publicly announced, so we may not. The rumours will either be proven true or we shall otherwise never know. As for my opinion, based on what I've seen, do I believe these rumours? Well, I mean, I'd like to, but ultimately nothing is confirmed until it's actually, officially confirmed. And yes, I am cautious about wantonly believing something because I want it to be real, not because it's necessarily wrong to do that if that's your thing. Plenty of people who are convinced by it have been mulling over this information longer than I've been paying attention to the entire subject, and this buzz certainly hasn't originated from nowhere. And if this recent article by Matt Wales of Eurogamer has any bearing, a Virtuos technical art director updated their LinkedIn profile earlier this month highlighting their work on a mysterious, unannounced Unreal Engine 5 remake. And unlike the MP First claim, that is a well I found my way to the bottom of. Whether that's actually Oblivion is a different question, but it certainly bolsters the core claim that this video is focusing on. And yet I still find the idea of an Elder Scrolls game in the Unreal Engine quite outlandish. Worst case scenario, Unreal Engine 5 will be treated like a one-stop fix to all of the game's problems, and that won't work out well. And best case scenario, it works out really well and then we're still stuck with the creation engine in the Elder Scrolls 6. So there is a risk of Bethesda shooting themselves in the foot here, however the question is which one. Nonetheless, I don't especially want to get carried away with much of any details this early. Should this remake prove to be a thing, I'll be excited to learn more at least. But I will say my interest is more aimed at Sky Oblivion, since we've known that's been a thing for years and years and years, and the modders behind it have undertaken a right mammoth with the project nearing completion, or at least that's the way I understand their recent path to release roadmap, published by Rebel's Eyes. Anyhow, all MP First claims to know about the project is as follows. For the blocking system, ideas to improve it were taken from Souls-like and action games, as the original system was considered too boring and frustrating. Sneak icons are now highlighted in the improved sneak system, and damage calculation methods have been reworked. The stamina system is modified to be less frustrating for the player, making the knockdown that occurs when stamina is depleted more difficult to activate through changes in calculation methods, and the HUD was changed to make it easier to understand and more aesthetically appealing to young players. And if you ask me, that can fuck right off. In my experience, that just means they're going to take all the art out of it. And sure, there's something of an adjustment period with Oblivion's HUD layout, but it does make sense. And hit reactions have also been added to improve the response to damage inflicted on the player and NPCs. And then finally, archery was improved to make it more playable and modern in both third and first person viewpoints. All in all, none of that betrays any major information with regards to this potential remake, and is only information relevant to the supposed job of the former developer who unwittingly provided this outlet with that information. For legal purposes, if indeed that happened. And I suppose this information doesn't reek of nonsense because, were this a fake leak, a false rumour sparked purely for engagement, which I'm not saying this is not, by the way, as I simply don't know, typically they hit as many of the major points that you'd actually want to hear about as possible. This is so it sparks as big a discussion as possible, for reasons that elude my understanding. In this case, it's just the vague nitty-gritty of the odd gameplay system here and there, and the idea of the HUD being reworked, so it isn't necessarily obvious bait, but I still can't shake my doubts however rational they may sound. So I would caution against getting too excited until and if we actually get something official. I'd like to know your thoughts on this, however. Do you think this is legitimate or do you think it's bullshit? I can frankly see this going either way because it all makes about as much sense as it doesn't. I've had a look into what people have been saying. Some people seem to believe it and others aren't quite convinced. And frankly, most of the time I can see where the logic that brought people to these conclusions have come from. But you know what, I'm going to end today's video there. Thanks for watching this excuse to chat absolute nonsense for the past 15 minutes. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.